So welcome to the final AMA for the Team Topologies Book Club. We've got some questions that have already been posted into the channel, so we'll take a little time to answer those. We've got about 30 minutes today. So with the ones there, we can do some closing remarks about book club. That should fill our time. And the way that we'll be doing these today is, since we've got both Manuel and Matthew, we'll have them answering questions and asking questions of one another using the ones that are posted in the channel. So I will kick it over to them.
Hi, everyone. It's fun to be back doing another AMA. So
Good to be here. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah.
I'm going to kick it off with a question to Matthew. That was from Jarek. I believe that was the first one unanswered. So Jarek says, company culture is a hot topic nowadays. We're at the point in the growth of our organization where we're likely about to outgrow our small company culture. We're already at the size where not everyone knows everyone in the company, what roles they play, and how those roles affect each other. Team Topologies makes it clear the productivity benefits of a well-defined team API, but do well-defined team APIs also correlate to a more well-defined sense of purpose or belonging within an organization? Have you noticed positive changes not only in the productivity of a company, but also in a company's culture when adopting more well-defined team APIs? I recognize that culture strength is a difficult attribute to measure, but I reckon you all are better equipped to measure it than I am. So I figured I would ask. It is a difficult question.
So I think the classic example of this working really well is at Amazon Web Services. We mentioned this in the book. Manuel, maybe when I'm talking, you could have a little look for exactly which page that is. But it's so back in, I think, 2003, CEO of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, sent this memo out talking about every team shall interact with another team through a well-defined API, and so on and so on. So-called two pizza team, but there's a lot more behind it than that. And whether or not Jeff Bezos really understood some of the science and kind of sociology behind it, or whether he was just a gut feeling, it kind of doesn't matter, in the sense that he had the feeling that actually, if you have very clear responsibility boundaries and very clear sense of purpose within units of a team size, then you will be able to scale the operation much more hugely. And clearly, Amazon Web Services is a huge operation now, and it's you know, so we're heading towards what, 15, 16 years worth of that kind of way of interacting. It clearly works. It clearly works in that particular context, but it clearly works certainly building modern cloud-based software. And I think there's an awful lot kind of around that. So that's a kind of canonical example, if you like, of that kind of model really working with these kind of what we'd call team APIs. But it happens in other companies as well.
Yeah, you mentioned also the sense of purpose in the question. I think what sometimes we fail to acknowledge is that different people in the same organization are going to have different purposes. The reasons why they're there and what motivates them is going to be different. So I think being aware of that, so you might have some people who really get a kick out of helping others grow and being able to kind of mentor and help others. Other people just want to be experts on the technical side. Obviously, they need more skills than that, but being able to cater for what each person really likes to do, what gives them a sense of purpose, is also important, besides the team APIs and all the things that Matthew mentioned.
So the Amazon stuff is on page 82 in the book. And I think it's a really important point that Manuel just touched on, is that clearly people are motivated by different things. And part of what we wanted to do with the Team Topologies kind of patterns and way of thinking is, cater to a wide range of different kind of ways of working for individuals. So people who are more strongly motivated by getting right down in the details of something. There are ways of working within the kind of Team Topologies, different team types for them to fit. There's also ways of there's also places within an organization for people who like to be much more kind of end user facing or customer facing. So obviously within the stream teams, people who prefer to work on more infrastructure-y stuff, kind of in the platform team, and so on. People who prefer actually to have a kind of enabling role or to help other people understand things better. Those people would kind of sit in an enabling team, and people who want to kind of try out different kind of skills can join different kind of teams at different times to improve different kind of skills. The key thing here is that we've tried to identify ways in which these kind of ways of behaving are much clearer, and so it should feel much much clearer. It should feel much more well defined how we should be kind of acting at a given time with other people in other teams in the organization. So it should feel kind of more coherent. My role in the company should now be clearer and much more coherent, and I've got more context for what I'm doing and when and why.
I think the key point there is essentially aligning the individual purpose with the team purpose. So you don't have a misalignment of someone being in a team and actually their individual purpose is different. So with the team topologies, we clarify what is the responsibilities and purpose of teams. So it's easier to make that kind of matching and make sure you're not putting people in teams where they actually are doing work that it's not motivating that type of work. So it's interesting because we just wrote an article that's going to be published on Tech Beacon exactly around these issues. And then it goes a bit into the hiring part as well, because how do you make the hiring process fit into this view of teams and purpose and alignment? Do you want to read the next question?
Yep. So next question is from Andrew McNeil, who says, you note the need to avoid the remit of maintenance of software. How does this square with the goal of retiring older platforms that still need some support but are migrating to greener pastures? And Andrew says they've got some VB6 applications that is on its last legs and no one wants to maintain it, but they have to. So I'd like to, well, I actually went ahead and answered this question already yesterday because I got kind of carried away, but that's fine. So I was talking about, yes, we got to expand on it in a second, but what I was mentioning there is I myself worked at a company a few years ago where they had a core part of the transaction processing logic was actually written in Visual Basic VB6, and the company was doing something like £2 billion sterling revenue every year. So I mean, it's really a really key part of the whole system. And I think the key thing about this is to realize that if you've got a piece of technology like that is really important, and for some reason has been allowed to kind of be retained there, in that kind of case, it's going to be kind of a bad experience for a team that's going to be running that. It's going to be awkward to work with. It's difficult to test, kind of scary. Let's say, certainly in the case of VB6, it's actually pretty awkward. So I worked with systems like that for quite a bit. It's kind of awkward to test for lots of reasons. It's difficult to install in different machines, this kind of thing. And so it becomes quite awkward. So what we have to do is expect to invest additional time and effort in automating things, in enabling that or allowing that team to spend more time on the kind of machinery and test infrastructure to make their experience of working with that stuff better. So perhaps we reduce the expected flow of new features around that component or around those services, around that team, to enable that team to have a much better experience working with those older systems. That in itself should be a strong driver to either replace those systems or automate them better, or to migrate off the old technology. Because if we're spending a lot of money and effort dealing with the kind of the older technology, then would it be not better to invest that in upgrading them into something newer? So I think the dynamic works really, really well. Particularly, if we've got a team that would prefer to be working on newer technology, but also working on this old one, they're able to spot the opportunity to bring newer approaches into this older technology. If you just give older technology to a kind of so-called legacy team or like a maintenance team. The danger is that the people in that team have not experienced newer ways of working, and so that older system gets more and more out of date in terms of the deployment pipeline tooling, in terms of the test automation they're using, and it gets worse and worse. What you need to do is find a kind of dynamic within your organization to make those older systems owned by teams that have context around the latest technology, so they're able to spot the opportunity to upgrade things and to bring newer practices around that older technology, even if the older technology remains there for some time.
In my case, I was fortunate to escape VB6 when I started working. But if you think about it, it's not just this very, well, now kind of niche technologies. Even I've worked in an organization, and this seems quite a common anti-pattern, which is you get some people or some teams that are mostly work on this technology and other teams mostly on that technology, and then it kind of perpetuates. So anything that comes in as a request or changes that you need to do, it just goes to whoever has more experience with that technology. And that brings about kind of problems Matthew was talking about, also in terms of motivation for people. So in my example, we were using .NET on the front-end side and Java on back-end on this kind of border control type of systems and document control. But people wanted to move on to do mobile apps, and we were starting around that, mobile apps, and for tablet as well, and new technologies like wireless exchange of information, protocols, etc. But people were stuck with whatever they had been working. They were either .NET developer or Java developer, and then kind of the lucky ones got to work on the new technologies. So that's not a good way to approach the evolution in terms of the technologies as well, because that kind of kills motivation, or it can kill motivation for some people. Again, it's catering to different interests of different people. Some might be fine with always working on the same technology. Others want to evolve and have the opportunity to work with new things. But getting into that pattern that it's always the same people working on the same systems and same technologies, it's problematic, because at some point that technology becomes niche, and then it becomes difficult to apply the new practices that have been considered, good practices in engineering today, and so those teams become really outdated in their ways of working, like Matthew was saying.
So the relevant sections of the book for that question, if you look at page 171 through to 174, I'll put something in the Slack channel now. That's the relevant sections of the book. Page 171 to 174 are relevant. Okay, Manuel, do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, so Andrew was asking about the team of one. One of the approaches I have advocated in our teams is to treat the work you, the developer, is doing as though you were in a team, even if there is only one person there. This applies to our entire team, as we are doing QA and deployment and all in a small group where we used to have dedicated groups. We still Scrum every day, but areas of responsibility are split. Any thoughts or pitfalls?
What strikes me around this is if one of the aspects of this kind of team of one is that we become very much clearer about the way in which our software should interact with the way in which my software should interact with somebody else's software, and we're thinking about those kind of dynamics, the kind of Conway's law inspired dynamics, that could be a useful thing, even though you're still quite a small group of people. Some of the dynamics we talk about in Team Topologies book kind of only really start to apply once we get beyond about 15 people. Certainly when you've got a very small group, the likelihood is that you'll kind of more be working together. But it's still, I think, worth looking at things from a different angle and say, well, what would happen if we actually did work more as a whole team together, working on the same stuff at the same time? And what kind of different dynamic would that give us? what kind of faster feedback would it give us in different places? So I can see some value in kind of thinking about me as a single person, as a team, but probably you want to try some of the techniques of the team focused techniques would probably deliver you some additional benefits as well.
Right.
But it's an interesting idea.
I guess I would say you can probably think about some aspects as an individual, like how do you like to, your own API, if you like, individual API, how do you prefer to communicate with others? What are the kind of things that you should be making visible to others, in terms of the work you're doing, your knowledge? How do you share things that you learn and what you know with others, so that, as a group, then everyone's able to do more. So I think that kind of thinking can be helpful, but it has to be aligned with the team. Again, it has to be thinking of what the team needs to perform better and to be more transparent, to be able to share knowledge easier, I think.
Yeah, that feels right to me. So the next question is from Kirsten. What is the best team topology for completing migrations? Where might these typically fit in? Migration defined as a major rework of your technology stack to create technical leverage or reduce technical debt. For example, moving from virtual machines to containers, or rolling out circuit breaking, or moving from on-premise to the cloud. There's a reference to an article. She said, I always seem to find myself on migration projects that require contribution from folks across teams, but don't need a long-lived team. You said it doesn't need a team for more than a year, but actually that's potentially quite a long time. The research seems to suggest that teams take, depending on the culture and the kind of nature of the company and so on, but teams can take perhaps up to 3 months to get to the stage where they're actually quite high performing. So actually, if you actually got a year-long effort, it could still be worth actually creating a team for that year effort, because for the final 3 months, or possibly longer, for the final 9 months of the year, possibly longer than that, if it takes a shorter length of time to create the team and to get it working, then you might have like 10 months, 9 months worth of really good, useful work that team can do. So, if we're talking multiple months, then it's probably worth thinking about a team-focused effort. But back to the main part of the question, I think what's interesting here is the way that you look at this kind of problem, the way that lots of organizations look at this problem. Let's say we need to move from on-premise to the cloud, as an example. Why does the organization believe that they have to shift everything at the same time as part of one big effort? Why? I mean, I know there are some reasons in terms of where data sits and access to data and things like this, but we're trying to optimize for flow. We're trying to optimize for team ownership of bits of software. If this team does own this kind of service or this set of services, why can we not have that team migrate its set of services separately, let's say from on-premise to the cloud, get that working? If necessary, we've got some kind of VPN or some kind of private connection from the cloud back into the on-premise stuff to start with. Eventually that disappears because everything's in the cloud. But the key thing here is, instead of seeing it as an activity that must take place across every single part of our software estate, think of it in terms of flow. Think of it in terms of flow that's aligned to teams and where teams can take ownership of that stuff. Yes, we need some coordination in terms of the approach and learning. That's where we have lunchtime technical talks, internal tech conferences, things like this. We have enabling teams working across multiple different stream-aligned teams. But see it as a series of migrations, if you like, that are aligned to these stream teams, and coordinate it like that. So that at the same time as making these changes, we're actually kind of enabling these teams to own some of the services as well, or we're setting up the environment, if you like, for future teams to own those services. That's how I would start to approach that?
Yeah, I think we come back again to the idea of not thinking about projects, and migration projects are just another project, and focusing on the products and platforms. So in this case, in these examples, it depends a bit where you are at today, but like moving from VMs to containers, maybe if you're a small organization, you have 2 or 3 teams, maybe you have people from different teams collaborating on, okay, let's try to do this for one application that's running on a VM, and we want to run it on containers and see how, how hard that is or not. And let's do one and then think about how do we expand to the others, but giving the ownership to the teams. Or you might be at the position where you already have a platform, perhaps, and maybe that platform provides some service through an API or a web interface where you can create VMs at the click of a button, for example. And now you want to keep that interface of the platform, but having containers somehow. So you might have a discovery period where you take one team that you're starting with to, you've identified this maybe is a good pilot to move from VM to containers, and that team is working closely with the platform team to understand what they need to do to provide that. And then once that's done, then it's going to be much easier for the other stream teams to then take advantage of the new service provided by the platform. So it depends a bit on your current organization, but like Matthew said, not focusing on this as projects, as kind of discrete transformations, but actually we're always evolving. We're always having things that we need to adapt, that we need to change to reduce technical debt or improve our technical abilities, but take those as evolutions rather than migrations. I think that's the key thing there.
Yeah, so it's a good point, and I think so. One thing where one way in which a really good platform, thinnest viable platform like we talk about in the book, one way in which a good platform can really help with this kind of migration stuff is to make the experience of shifting from one technology to another much smoother. So the platform will provide additional APIs or different additional kind of automation capabilities, additional monitoring and metrics capabilities, so that it's easy for teams to do the right thing when migrating from one thing to another. So it will take us a little while to understand what those capabilities should be inside the platform. But once we've done that 1 or 2 times with 1 or 2 teams, that functionality is now available in the platform, which makes it easier for these other teams later on to do their migrations in a team-focused, in a stream-focused way, rather than trying to do it across the whole software estate at the same time. It's a great question. So thank you, Kirsty, for that. It's a proper real-world situation there. Thank you.
Yeah, it's hard because sometimes you have this pressure from higher up that whatever, we need to move to the cloud because everyone's on the cloud, but there's this pressure to make things happen and quickly, and it's not always easy to get this message across of thinking about the evolution in a more smoother over time, rather than, okay, now we're going to put all our efforts into until we're in the cloud, because even that has nuances, right? We might have been the cloud, but we just did, shift and lift, and actually what we really need to do is change a bit of our architecture of our system. So yeah, it's hard. Okay, next question from Mike is, when there is a need for transformation, but HR, manpower, staff assignments, and financial components of the organization are functionally siloed apart from the IT delivery part of the organization, and he's talking about government, military organizations, where and how would you start to begin reshaping the team topologies within the groups? What conversations would you recommend we have with the leaders to begin this initiative?
So to an extent, I'll say a small amount, and then Manuel, maybe you come in. But to an extent, some of these changes are changes that we can do just within the kind of technology group, because that's, let's say, that's probably within the remit that a lot of people listening to this AMA now you'll probably be sitting somewhere inside technology. So to an extent, we can make some of these changes just within what we might call IT or technology or engineering or whatever. But I think it's important to start having conversations with people with people outside of technology. One place to start is the case study from Auto Trader, which is on page 53. Because if you read that case study, they did some great stuff at Auto Trader, where they changed where people sit in the building. Instead of having silos of HR, management, sales, marketing, engineering, they arranged people on different floors of the building, so that you had one kind of business stream on one floor, another business stream on another floor. So on each floor you have sales, marketing, legal, finance, engineering, IT, and so on each floor, and each floor focuses on a different kind of slice of the business. So there's examples of organizations doing this kind of stuff, and they're being really successful. So you can use that as a case study, as a way to kind of start a conversation with some people outside of technology, let's say in HR or in other groups, and say, this stuff actually does work.
Yeah, I would say different approaches that you can take there. So on the IT delivery part, you can start clarifying what are the team's purposes and how much do they align or not with the team topologies, the fundamental topologies and types of interactions. So without making any changes, you can just start discussing, what are our team's purposes and how they behave and interact, and just kind of highlighting where, what are the good patterns and maybe some anti-patterns that you have in your organizations. Maybe you have silos, handovers, those kind of things. You can start to identify them, and then you can have a better picture of what are the changes that we expect to need to do to improve our flow, to improve the quality of what we deliver. But sure, at some point you'll get into kind of barrier, depending on how much HR and the finance decide in terms of how teams are created, how people are, even how people's careers and the things there. In some organizations, it's very strict. Like the role of a one individual can be very strict, and you're like in a little box. You can do this and you cannot do that. So you might get into those barriers, and then, for example, a good conversation starter would be Conway's Law, where you can talk to those people and explain, there are effects in terms of the systems we deliver and the quality of what we deliver and the capacity to evolve and to support these systems properly. There's impact from the way we are organizing our teams. So Conway's Law, start talking about the mirroring effect. Sure, it's going to take some time, but you need to start those conversations as well. And over time, also the idea of moving from projects to products, if that's the case. It's going to take time. You need to see what you can do internally in IT, defining team APIs as well, for example. Can you rearrange the physical space, for example, to make it more team-oriented and support different types of interactions? There are a number of things you should be able to do within IT at the same time as starting conversation with HR and other parts of the organization. And then using case studies from our book, from DevOps Handbook, from the DevOps Enterprise, that today it has reached a number of knowledge base, if you like, around these case studies, that it's quite powerful to use those, and you can easily find, normally you can easily find other organizations in the same industry that kind of helps. So if you're a bank, a large bank, you look at examples from Barclays, Capital One, etc., and you bring that to the table, because that's going to help those people identify with these case studies of other organizations that they know well, so that can help as well, rather than saying, well, whatever GitHub, Google, or something like that does this, that might not get the same impact on this.
Yeah, you need to find case studies from equivalent organizations or competitors. Yeah. Ideally, say, hey, our main competition is doing this stuff, or is publicly saying that they're doing these things. Maybe we should have a look at it too.
When you start to have some benefits from the things you've been able to do in IT by yourselves, then make sure to showcase that, and just we're gonna do a open presentation to everyone, and try to get people from those other areas to come in as well.
So the next question is a good question. So the next question is from Johan, who posted some questions in the other channel, but reposted them here. And the question here is about how to visualize teams in different views. So if the organization is mainly based in a kind of plan structure, you may use a directory service like Active Directory, and Johan is looking to try and find visualization showing how things will be. So the to be view. It wants to try and show a team of teams in different network structures. And so the questions are, what are the 3 most common org chart tools? What are the 3 best org chart tools today? PowerPoint, Visio. Okay, so I think there's a couple of different things here. Manuel, do you want to start? I'll do some digging around.
So I think, the short answer is, I don't know those tools. I don't know if they exist today. It was interesting because you just had a little discussion on Twitter yesterday about, asking, are there any HR tools that actually even take the concept of a team as a first-class citizen rather than the individual, and have considerations about what do teams need, and that kind of thing. So as far as we know, that doesn't even exist. So we're talking quite a big gap between what exists today to kind of tools that you would be able to look at teams and network of teams and interactions, and then kind of try to design an evolution, which is what I understand you're trying to do. So I find effective to just ask people, and you'd be surprised perhaps in many organizations how much they are not aware of what exactly is happening today. Just asking people to draw out what are the teams, what are their purpose and responsibilities, and what are the common interactions, thinking along the lines of the 3 interactions in the book: collaboration, facilitating, or service, providing access service. Just that alone, just writing down on a whiteboard or on paper, which teams do we have today, how do they interact on a regular basis or in the current time frame. That can, first of all, you need to bring in people from different teams, and that can raise a lot of awareness and discussion to then, okay, how do we evolve? You don't necessarily need a tool. Would be nice to have tools that can do this kind of things. I don't know if Matthew has other suggestions.
Yeah, so
just starting with pen and paper can help.
Yeah, so if you look in, so I've just put a photograph in the thread that that is attached to the question from Johan. So we run some training. Manuel and I run training for Team Topologies. We'll probably mention some details at the end of this AMA, but I've just put a photograph in there from a training session that I ran last week in the UK. and one of the attendees took this picture. One of the things that we do in the training is to model the different team structures in the organization using a very simple technique, bits of colored card. And so you'll see the colors there match the colors that we use in the book, or they're very close anyway. So the stream teams are there in yellow, they're kind of long, the platforms in blue, and we've got an enabling team. So I think this is on Twitter as well. So we'll put the link on Twitter. We'll put the link in the Slack channel too. The key thing here is that using bits of colored card to try and model things is very physical. It's very quick to move things around. You don't have to redraw stuff, and it's very straightforward to kind of take to another part of the organization. You don't need to have fancy tools to do this stuff. You can actually just use bits of physical card. Do something similar with something like Google Slides or PowerPoint or something, very simple shapes. Part of the reason in the book that we came up with these quite simple shapes is to make it easy for people to explore visually how their organization would look like. So this is very deliberate on our part to make it as easy as possible to explore visually how the organization looks. So to be honest, what we found is that these bits of colored card are kind of one level all you need, because the organization should not get much more complicated than we can represent with shapes like that. That's literally part of the point of coming up with these kind of shapes. So Manuel's put the link to the tweet from Nick Tune, who was at the training. So that's in the Slack channel now.
And I think you would need to be at the very kind of had Team Topologies as a common idea in the organization for a good while to get to a point where you would benefit from actual tooling that you could see kind of in a much more dynamic way. Let's say, how are we collaborating, and how are we working together, and how are teams evolving over time when you already are kind of deep into this Team Topologies approach. So that might happen in the future. Maybe we can think about it, developing a tool at that point. But for now, we expect that most organizations, like Matthew said, is kind of pen and paper approach, because it's more about starting conversations and understanding how things should be evolving, rather than and moving away from this idea that we have a defined static organization and that's all we need.
One of the things that Manuel and I might do is to make those colored cards, piece of colored card, available as a kind of template or something, so that you can kind of buy it, either buy it online or just kind of download a PDF template or something, and then use that as a way to create the different shapes, to make it really easy for you to kind of use the same kind of physical card shapes to model the organization. So we're thinking about that. If that sounds like something that's interesting, then it'd be interesting to just get in touch with us and give us your ideas around that, because we want to have some tools to make it really easy for people to kind of do these, visualize the organization and how teams interact. I'll just put a note in the Slack channel so that people can respond.
How should they get in touch with you?
I'll put a note in Slack here. Basically, just info@teamtopologies.com is the email address, or just drop us a message from our website, teamtopologies.com. So I'm just writing a message now. One of the things that we might do is to create some templates for the colored card, so people can model their organization.
I think we've answered all the questions as far as I can tell. Is that right, Alex?
Yeah, I believe so. That was the last one there.
That's great. So look, thanks everyone. It's been great. Some really good questions. It's been inspiring for us. And I think we're going to be pulling together like a selection of the questions and answers into some sort of format and putting that online for people. And you'll hear from the folks at Alex and colleagues at IT Revolution about what that looks like, I guess, over the coming weeks.
They'll be anonymous, of course, unless you want to have your name on it. Yeah, it was really fun to do this. Would be great to have feedback from people, not only the book, but also how the book club run. I'm sure IT Revolution would like to know that as well. For me, was fun. Was really great to see how people were engaging and putting forward their own experience in their organizations, and then starting discussions and helping each other out. So that was really good, and I think it goes in line with IT Revolution's approach of really focused and books and the way they, well, also the way they treat us as authors is really focused with a lot of attention, and in terms of giving the best value possible for the readers. And some people mentioned the collection of books of IT Revolution really connects the dots on many things. So that's really great. And yeah, I hope to see some people at the DevOps Enterprise Summit in Las Vegas end of this month.
Yes, good point. So there's some comments from people. Yeah, we might do like a lean coffee type thing, or just to get together and discuss it at some point at in Las Vegas. If you're going to be at DevOps Enterprise Summit, then just give us a message, say hi, or reply to the thread that's about the kind of meeting up at coffee. Could be good. It'd be good to see people who've been in these discussions as well.
Yeah, and I think for me, it was really incredible hosting a book club with 13 or more different time zones all at the same time. It was a really valuable learning experience, seeing how to facilitate that type of thing. I think the biggest learning that came away from me was different ways to engage when it's not necessarily everybody online at the same time. So figuring out like ways that you can post things that everybody can engage with when they're able to get online or when they're awake, and different ways to facilitate the conversations for those that are more interested in watching and learning versus being a more active participant in the discussions. Because I can see that you're all there, and I can see the engagement with the emails and the videos that we're posting. So there are definitely two different experiences that we're catering to during the whole event. I also wanted to say how, from not only somebody who's helping host it, but also a participant, how valuable it was to have both of you answering these questions in a very ongoing fashion and going into so much depth, not only pointing to the different parts of the book that would reference the questions that were coming in, and always having a spot, there was always something in the book that you were able to point to, but then also expanding on those ideas with more personal experiences and really catering it to the exact question being asked. I thought that was incredibly valuable as a participant. And
it's been great. It's been really good to have this kind of engagement and to be able to bring in different experience and so on, and to contextualize it as well. So it's been good for us too, I think.
Cool. Last thing I wanted to say too is that it's been incredible. We had 203 people here sign up for the book club. Obviously, it'd be wonderful if lots of people would read this book. So if there is one thing that you guys can do to help get the word out, it'd be wonderful to leave reviews on Amazon. It's actually really helpful for us to get people to notice the book on that platform. We'll do everything we can, obviously, from the IT Revolution side. These guys have been wonderful. They've got this platform with Team Topologies and DevOps Topologies. So on that note, thank you guys for participating in this way and taking all this time to do not only participation in the written part of the book club, but these videos as well.
It's been great. Thank you. Thank you for IT Revolution. Thank you to everyone who's attended, or anyone who listens to this video later on.
Yeah, we're also looking forward to hear from people later on as they try to apply some of the ideas on Team Topologies. That would be great if you get back to us and say what worked, what didn't?
Yeah, so we've got our website, we've got news articles and things on there. We're starting to collect additional kind of mini case studies. So if you're one of these companies that started to look at the Team Topologies book and you're kind of starting to implement some of the ideas, then just get in touch with us. If you've got a great story, then we'd love to kind of share that online or in some format like that on either on our website or on a different website, pull together a little kind of mini case study or an experience report and share that with a wider audience. We'd be totally up for doing that. That'd be great.
Cool. Yeah, and anybody listening, if you want to go into more depth, I think they're going to post about some other engagements they have coming up. There's some workshops, so keep an eye out for that. We'll let you know more via email too. All right. Well, goodbye, everybody. We're going to close this up.